Our today's guest is Adora Winquist. She is a wonderful person, such a beautiful energy. You will absolutely love her. She is an expert in vibrational medicine and in quantum alchemy, and she's an author of many books and so many things she does. So we'll see how many of the pieces we can touch today in the interview, because it's going to be so interesting. She could be found on the website, thesoulinstitute.co or adorawinquist.com. So welcome, Adora.
Thank you so much, Eugenia. It's a divine pleasure to be here with you today.
So let's start by kind of focusing on what is your current main focus in work, because I know you do so many things, and there's anything from essential oils to the feminine energies, and I saw Mary Magdalene on your website and some other things. So what is the main focus of your work currently?
So the main focus of my work, well, let's talk about mission. So the mission overall of my work is to awaken, to anchor, and to actualize the spark of divinity and sovereignty that exists within all of us, so that we can ultimately walk our path of self-mastery in this lifetime. My vision through the school, the Soul Institute for Quantum Alchemy, is to awaken and elevate over 25 million individual souls to embody their purpose, their mission, and thrive in all facets of their life, which is really what quantum living is, right? It's about taking all the places and patterns of adversity that we all have to some degree, right? It may come through a different lens, a different viewpoint, a different paradigm, or a different perspective. But when we're able to transmute those patterns, just like the diamond, right? When we think of the diamond that is multifaceted, multidimensional, and so are we. And so as a diamond forms through great pressure, we have this beautiful gift of our lives to be able to remember the brilliance, the beauty, and the clarity that is within us when we polish our own patterns and transmute them and take those places of limitation and turn them into a life of thriving in every regard.
That is very beautiful. And I would totally agree that the component of self-mastery today, especially in the current planetary situation, is one of the most important pieces of each person finding their own path, their own purpose. Like I stand for individuality within the community, which I'm sure you do too. So how do you see the personal direction of finding this inner mission for people is related to what's currently happening on Earth?
Well, this is a great question, because we're here at such a unique juncture of time and space. And so in this regard, we have a potential that is rising to the surface within us. It's bubbling up to harness the power within this life, within this present moment, to unlock the wisdom and knowledge that is held throughout our soul, throughout our cells and our DNA and our bloodlines, to take that wisdom, assimilate it, and rise to our highest path and purpose. So how do we do that when we're surrounded by chaos, right? And so this is such an important question, because whether we're looking at it from our own personal vantage point of family or career or relationship or finances, we can all see chaos in some regard. And then, of course, when we look to the global theater on so many different perspectives, we can see chaos. So I'm going to bring this back for a moment, because you asked what is some of the focus of my work. Well, one of the things I'm doing right now, I just started a new book on sacred geometry for Callisto Press. And one of the things I love writing about sacred geometry is that it gives us a reminder that throughout the chaos that exists, whether it's in our personal life, on the planetary level, in our community, or at the cosmic level, right? Because creation is created through chaos. And yet all chaos can be brought back to divine order. And so with each and every pattern of chaos that exists within us, we can call upon these tools, interventions, alchemies from the natural world, from the cosmic perspective, and harness those with the power that is held within us to be able to recalibrate, to reconfigure, and to, more important than anything, to remember the truth of who we are. You see, I feel like there's this misnomer that we are these physical beings that are desperately trying to understand our spiritual connection, or to prove it, or to, how do we harness it? How do we work with it? How do we get it to change our mundane life? I believe that we are ultimately these vast spiritual beings that have chosen the limitation of this physical form to be able to come here and learn how to master the game of life and create a life beyond condition. And so by calling upon all of these alchemical aspects, whether it's crystals, essential oils, sacred geometry, meditation, nutrition, they're all important, and they help us to transform into the best version of ourselves.
Oh, that is so beautiful and so true too. I mean, this is the part that I always talk about, how spirituality is not something out there. It's actually on the inside of us, and we're kind of beings of the higher frequency that came into lower frequency to learn. So that brings us to that balancing of, like you mentioned, the sacred geometry, you mentioned being in the moment. So there's the feminine and the masculine. And I think our society for a long time has been directed in a very masculine way, as well, some control systems, but also internally kind of losing the flow that comes with the feminine side. And what I see a lot in spiritual communities, and I wonder what your view on this is that they've been almost overcompensating, like it's been too far into the spiritual side, feminine, so much so that it's ungrounded, versus the other side, which is, let's say, like religious or some other structure that's like way too masculine, that doesn't actually have the true harmony. So there gotta be a middle that is the some sort of a flow that is taking from both sides but doesn't go into extremes. So what is your view on that?
It's such a dance, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yet we are called into unity, because the pendulum, whenever it swings, universal law is it has to swing in the same magnitude, if you will, in the other direction before balance is regained. And so here we are, each trying to reconcile our individual relationships with the masculine and feminine within us, right? Because whether we're masculine or feminine in form, both polarities exist within. And so we have to address that with the patterning at the subconscious level. And because what you said is so important, when we're walking the spiritual path, we must be dedicated and vigilant to remember that it's not just a spiritual path. As above, so below, right? Both are required to come into that state of self-mastery in our existence. And in addition to that, it's as much about harnessing the power of our mind along with the source of infinite creation and love within our hearts, and the wisdom that is held within our soul, to be able to reconcile both the masculine and feminine within. And of course, because in this universal construct, we have the law of the triad. So the way that we manifest in this reality is through the triad. And so it's not just our masculine and feminine that are called to be reconciled and brought back to harmony. It's any aspect of our child consciousness that holds unresolved emotion, trauma, and experience, right? That is still calling out to come back into a state of coherence within our soul.
Yeah, and that brings us to the DNA activation piece, because this is kind of like you went full circle there from the duality into unity. And speak a little bit more on the genetics, because I know you do a lot of work with essential oil and the frequency on the quantum level, utilizing that, because that's a very interesting direction.
It's so important. In fact, this happens to be my book on DNA healing that came out last year with my publisher in London. It's called Detox, Nourish, Activate, with a play on that, DNA, plant and vibrational medicine for energy, mood, and love. And it talks about how important it is to remember that we're not just living and addressing and reconciling this life. We are comprised of trillions of cells in our body, and each cell carries our genetic imprint. So if you think about the miracle of that for a moment, from just one perspective, that it is infused with every experience we have ever had since the moment of our conception, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And if that isn't enough of a miracle, every experience in the same regard that our mother or father has had in their lives is also held within us, and their mothers and their fathers, and so on and so on and so on generationally. So from that regard, it is our ancestry, it is our heritage, those belief systems, those emotional and mental patternings that are carried through us, right? And so when we can really look at ourselves under that lens, we can see, wow, the opportunity, the potential that is held within us, not only from this life and our potential of creation, but to transform and transmute the patternings that have been held generationally. By clearing the past, we can illuminate our highest and brightest future for that of ourselves and our children and generations to come, because we're also doing it for and through the collective consciousness, right? This is work from the human perspective that is done from our souls to ourselves. And that is truly the path of self-mastery.
Yeah, and I would think that the healing process through one's DNA and the activation and the healing goes through all of these lines, the genetic lines the DNA is, of course, connected to. But since ultimately it's connected to entire humanity, this is also how we serve at the highest level, by not just intending and doing something sort of externally, like a higher templates and morphogenic fields, but as well bringing it through the body and vibrating our body differently. Would you agree?
Exactly. Because we've chosen this physicality and this planet as a school, right? And the real work is our soul work, which is why my slogan is your soul work is your soul work. Because when we shift something within us, right? When we can transform and transmute and rise from the pattern that we've carried in our soul to ourselves, not only does it affect everyone and everything around us, in particular our family, right? But also it gets passed through to our soul family, right? Those energetic beings that may or may not be here physically on this planet. And it also then becomes imprinted on the web of life for all humanity. And that is how we evolve our level of consciousness as a whole. It's really quite beautiful.
It's a beautiful process. I was just going to say that. That's really quite beautiful. Yeah. So talk a little more about the alchemy part itself, because creating a physical substance with a specific frequency that then can do something in the body, which is also physical substance with a specific frequency through resonance. That's a very that's alchemy, but that's an unusual direction currently, because so much work currently has been done in out there realms for not grounded in material plane, and alchemy actually grounds it in matter.
Yes, because, and here's part of the another misconception about spirituality in a lot of schools of spiritual healing, is that so much emphasis is placed solely, singularly on your spiritual life, that the physical self, the emotional self, and the mental self really start to devolve further, right? When there is that, it's like having a spiritual mask, if you will, because all of the trauma, all of the emotion, all of the past is held in the body, right? So when we think, well, I want to work on my energy field and I want to work on my spirituality, well, everything that's held within the energy field is also held within your cellular consciousness. And that's why we just can't, well, I'm going to think this is different. I'm going to have a mental intention. Well, that's only a one phase or perception or level to be addressed. And I love to bring this back to the sacred geometry form of the infinity symbol. And if you see that, it's the elongate 8, horizontal. And one of the beautiful teachings of that is that we have to address not only our physicality, but our psycho-spiritual aspect as well. And that is how we come to the concentric point in the center, which is the access point to the 0-point field of limitless creation. And this is where we can ultimately learn to live a life beyond limitation, right? So, but the physical nature is the biggest, if you will. It's not the biggest piece. It's such an important piece, right? Because that's why we've chosen this physicality. So we can learn how to be the spiritual beings and masters and creators of realities that we are, but to do it here in physical form, in embodiment, grounded into the earth, into this life, into our family of origin, because we chose that for a very specific purpose, because it created the conditions for us to come into this life and be introspective of our soul and what we've come in to learn, heal, grow, transform, transmute, awaken, activate, and evolve from.
Yeah, and in your business, you literally do some of these activations through the oils, right?
Yes, so that was
how did you mix those? Like, was this something that you had like a divine imprint to know what to pull, or do you feel like you came here with a gift, with a superpower of ability to kind of smell or sense or perceive frequencies that then you put together?
I would say definitely it's one of my superpowers. I've been blending products in this regard professionally for 25 years. In fact, I was working with this. This is from one of my new collections, the Sacred 8 Infinity Set. And so being able to create sacred space, just like I would do with a client, to call in those benevolent allies that I work with in the etheric realms, to access my intuition, which is a lot of clairaudience, so I can hear 3 drops of this oil, 4 drops of that oil, and then to infuse with vibrational patterns and cosmic templates that are able to not only awaken and transform and clear, repair the lines of light through the auric field, and access those places of deeper wisdom and ancient knowledge that are held within us. So it is such a joy and passion of mine in life and through many different businesses. In fact, the previous company that I built, that I had started back in 1998, became one of the first aromatherapy companies to have energetically infused blends for intentional purposes in the mass market, both nationally and internationally. So
how is it that you found within you this alchemical direction? Because this is not a typical thing that people do. And I always like to kind of pick things that people do that are unusual. So there are many people who say, oh, I'm an alchemist, but very few actually do something with physical reality to the point that there is a result and you do that. So can you speak a little bit like, what did you have to learn within you, or what led you to realizing like, oh, I have this gift that apparently others don't have, and I can pull things together that apparently do something magical in the body?
Yes, it is a very interesting concept to spiritize matter in this regard for visceral change. And so when I was young, when I was very little, I spent most of my time in nature. And I found that with the plants and the rocks and the trees, more solace and comfort and ease there than I did inside my house with my family. And it was like they spoke to me. They sang to me. They embraced me. And then when I had my first healing crisis at 18, 19 years old, because I'd had chronic and acute bronchitis my whole adolescence. I was sick quite often. And 18, 19, left home, didn't have insurance, and didn't have a lot of money, and was very sick. And I heard something about herbs, and I went and I bought a book on herbs and made my first tea. And that tea healed me so quickly. In fact, that tea is in fact, I did an Insta reel on it, of all things, like 2 days ago, because everyone back to school right now, kids bringing home germs, etc. We all, you can hear it. I have 2 small children. And so, we all came down with a bit of a bug in the past week. But so I started working with herbs first. Then I found essential oils, and I knew I was home. And then I did some travel study in India to go and study where the plants are grown and distilled, and go to pick the flowers with the women in the field as the jasmine flowers are opening. I still get my jasmine from India. It is remarkable and transformative and so deeply healing, especially to the feminine archetypical energies that are held within us. And then I spent time in Egypt, in particular with the Rosicrucian journey there, which is where I led one of my first retreats for the Rosicrucian, not retreats, meditations for the Rosicrucian organization on that wonderful journey. And through the process of endometriosis, when I was about 21, I was very sick in my late teens, early 20s. At 21, my doctor wanted to do a hysterectomy. And I knew that I was to have children. And so I said no. And I said, you know what, enough is enough. I need to take responsibility for my life and my health. And that brought me deeper into the study of essential oils, deeper into my formulation, deeper into studying vibrational medicine, ultimately brought me to the Barbara Brennan School of Healing, which is the top school in the world for energy medicine from a professional practice perspective. And so I continued blending, and till to this day, I mean, I've created hundreds of products, probably worked with thousands of people around the world. And more than anything, it is such a gift to be able to share these medicines, to be able to share the alchemy through frequency, and to be able to witness with great humility and beauty the transformation that can happen and does happen within an individual, and how it changes everything for all of us.
Right, for all of us, because through the individual, we change it all. Well, I can talk with you for like next 2 hours, but unfortunately, we do have to wrap up. So you have a gift for our audience, something that they can perhaps begin the journey with you through. So what would that be? Can you describe it? And a link will be in the show notes. So everybody, that's where you can get it.
Absolutely. So I invite you and welcome you to join our quantum community, which is a place of, imagine a web of love and high vibrational light and frequency, where you can connect and commune not only with other individuals of like mind, but where you'll get 2 weeks free of the highest tier of our alchemy library, which is so wonderful because it's 4 pillars of alchemy: meditation, essential oils, crystals, and practical alchemy, all in one place to honor your most precious commodity, which is your time and energy. And also a free ebook, 4 Tools for Spiritual Growth, which has a lot of beautiful alchemical wisdom and interventions that you can work with at home to not only become the alchemy, but also the alchemist and curate your own path of self-mastery.
Well, this is a wonderful gift, Adora, and thank you so much. So yes, everybody who's heard everything she said and say, wow, I need this, there's a link in the show notes so you can get this. Thank you so much, Adora, for being here and sharing your wisdom, your gifts with us. It was very profound, and I think this would be very beneficial for our audience. So again, you can find Adora at adorawinquist.com or in the soulinstitute.co. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Eugenia. What a beautiful gift and contribution you are to your community.